So lovely to see you all. Welcome for coming. And let me start by introducing myself. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I can see we've got people from pretty well all over Brazil. So let me show you where I am. I'm here. I'm in this beautiful city called Welwyn Garden City, which is about 25 minutes from London. And as you can see, it is a garden city. And it's basically, it was a concept that was invented exactly 100 years ago. Some people said, look, we've got big cities, they're dirty and decadent, we've got lovely villages in the country. So let's design a new city, which will be like living in the country, and we'll have business things outside and factories and so on. And this was the second one, actually. Just for your information, the concept of a garden city, which is totally planned from zero, a little bit like Londrina, this concept they tried to put together in São Paulo. That's why we have Cidade Jardim. Okay, that's where the word comes from. It's a little bit different from where I am now, but anyway. So it's Welwyn Garden City, that's where I live. It's in England, it's very close to London. And would you believe it's 38 degrees today? So people who say, you know, the weather's always bad in England, there's no summer, it's 38 degrees, it's baking hot. It's just dropped to 35 because it's 8 o'clock at night here, but we've got a baking hot summer, so there we are. Okay, some of you may know me, as I said, from Brazil. Basically, I'm obviously British. I was born in England, grew up in England, went to university in England where I studied modern languages. And actually, my first job as a teacher was as a teacher of German. So I started my professional career as a teacher of German in England. And then I moved to Germany to teach English. And, you know, I just fell in love with it. I said, you know, this is what I want to do. I love it. It's so exciting. And also I had a dream. I wanted to see the world. And I thought, what a wonderful way to see the world and do something I really enjoy. So then I started traveling. I went to Nepal, you know, in the Himalayas, between India and China. I spent many years in Asia. And as many of you know, I also spent many years in Brazil, which I love very dearly. But I did come back to England in 2012, originally to Nottingham and now to Welwyn Garden City. I was very lucky when I came back because I'd done a lot of work for Helbling Languages, and they invited me to become their international teacher, trainer, and conference speaker. So for the last 8 years, I've been traveling the world and having a wonderful time. I feel very, very privileged to be able to do that. And I've had some very challenging situations, but also a lot of fun at the same time. So that's enough about me. Let's get on with, oh, you might know this as well. I mustn't forget to mention this. You may know me from New Roots. I'm the editor of New Roots. I've actually edited probably not all the issues, but most of them. And certainly the last 20 years, I've been editing New Roots. Again, it's a real privilege. It's a wonderful job. I love doing it. And I've just put an email there for you because as editor, I'm always looking for contributions. So if you'd like to send in a contribution, send it to this email and we'll get back to you with a brief for contributors giving you more details, okay? Don't think, by the way, that you have to be famous or an academic or something. It's not an academic magazine. It's for classroom teachers. And basically what I say to people, if you've got an idea and it works for you and it works in the classroom, it'll work for all other teachers as well. So don't be afraid. Send it in and we'll certainly have a look at it and let you know. Okay, let's get on with the talk then. So a brief overview just to give you an idea of what I'm going to try and cover in which is actually not a very long time. I'd like to look at the English language first of all, because the English language has some very special qualities to it that not all languages have. But then, of course, we want to look at fluency. That's what the talk is about, and how learners can master everyday language. This is partly based on something I discovered many years ago when I was working in London. And I discovered something I didn't know. And I've developed that, and I've used that and shared it with people since then. And it's something that really works. It's very practical, and it's fun. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to finish also with 10 tips for teaching vocabulary, because I'm assuming that most of you are classroom teachers, and I'm a practical person. I don't want to go blah, blah about theory, and then you go away thinking, so what? I want you to go away thinking, that's interesting, that's a good idea, I'm going to try that, I never thought about that. Otherwise, what's the point? Okay, so that's a quick overview. Moving on. A few questions. First, how many of these expressions do you know? You can put your answers quickly into the chat box, and I hope I can see them. If you're a native speaker, don't answer. Okay. None. 1, 2, 3. None. 4, 3. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic. All. Okay. None. 2. Great. So let me just tell you, you're all in the right place. Okay. I would actually expect most of you to say none, or maybe 1, or maybe 2. The question of do you know, it might be, well, oh yeah, I think I've heard that. I think it probably means, but I'm not sure. So another question about the same words is, how many do you use? Do you use these words frequently? Do you feel confident using them, knowing what they mean? Ah, this is interesting. None, 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 1, not really. Okay, good, great, no, fantastic. Oh, you're brilliant. I couldn't have asked for better answers. That's exactly the answers I wanted. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the English language. I'm going to ask a few, this is sort of statistics, but I was thinking when I was preparing this, there's so much about the English language we don't actually know, and we're English teachers. Can you imagine asking a doctor something like, how many bones are there in the body? And he said, oh, I don't really know. You wouldn't feel very confident talking to your doctor because you expect people to know that. So I think people expect us to know about the English language, and very often we don't. So here's the question. How many countries is English the official language? Answers, please. 10, 15, 40, 42, 5, question mark, 25. Okay. Okay, so basically you don't know, right? You don't know. And most people don't know. It's actually over 50. Over 50 countries, English is the official language. I have a talk, by the way, that I give about Portuguese, and I asked the same question about Portuguese in Brazil, and most people say 1 or 2. But I think it's something like 12 countries that Portuguese is the official language, 11 or 12. It's a lot more than what most people think. So looking at the world, we've got about almost 8 billion people in the world, okay? We've got 8 billion people in the world, and the interesting fact is that over 2 billion speak English. I guess it's the only language that a quarter of the world's population actually speak. So we've got 2 billion people speaking English, but we only have less than 400 million who speak English as a first language. I think that's a very interesting statistic. So let me ask you a question. Who's a native speaker? You know, people ask me this all the time, you know, and I don't want to hark on about this too much, but it does annoy me that we are still discussing the idea of the native speaker. We still have schools looking for teachers or coordinators and saying must be native speaker. I think it's more of a marketing thing more than anything, because it's all absolute rubbish. Who's a native speaker? My answer is who cares? Who cares? Because what's happened in more recent years is that more and more people are speaking English throughout the world. In this globalized world, we had different terminology before, and this has become questioned and changed. Okay? Exactly. People are saying there are Brazilians who speak like natives. Absolutely. Of course there are. So what we're looking for is a thing that's called functional nativeness. I love that expression. It's basically highly proficient speakers who have functional nativeness. Doesn't matter where you learn the language or how you use the language. And seriously, that I think is a realistic aim for anyone learning a foreign language, any language. I told you I lived in Brazil for many years. I think my Portuguese is very good, but I'm not Brazilian, and I never will be Brazilian. But I think now I have what I would call functional nativeness. In other words, I can actually understand everything, I can say everything, and I can use all kinds of, colloquial expressions and so on. I understand the culture. So that's what functional nativeness is all about. So there's a challenge, not to become a native speaker, but to have functional nativeness. But why is it so difficult? Because it is difficult. I mean, so many learners say to me, you kind of reach a plateau. English is not that difficult. You get to the intermediate level, and you just don't seem to get any further. I'm always thinking in Portuguese. I keep translating. There's so many things I don't know how to say. I make mistakes all the time. So why is it difficult? Is it pronunciation? I don't think it is. In fact, I'm sure it's not. I watched a brilliant presentation by the famous Penny Youre at Disal in Brasilia many years ago, and I loved it. And Penny brought some new research to the conference, which shows that actually there are very, very few sounds in English that actually make any difference. I go, really? But don't we have to pronounce everything perfectly? No, you don't. So one good example I love to give is the TH sound. I mean, TH is difficult for people who don't have functional nativeness. And this is true almost everywhere in the world because I think apart from Spanish in Spain, I've never come across anywhere that has this TH sound. But in fact, it doesn't matter how you say it. If you say the book, the book, everybody will understand. So I often say to teachers in Brazil, please stop torturing your students with the TH sound and all those ridiculous things about putting your tongue between your teeth and pushing this and that and the other. Just let them say it anyway, because it really doesn't matter. The only sounds, by the way, that are important are what we call those minimal pairs. They are important. So it's live, leave, for example. You say, I live, I leave. They're very difficult for Portuguese speakers especially. So they have to be correct, otherwise you can have miscommunication. But really, apart from that, pronunciation doesn't matter. And I seriously believe when people ask me, what's better, British English or American English, I always say Brazilian English. You have to think that, imagine you're in New York, bunch of Americans, and you're speaking away, and they say, oh, wait, you're not American. And you very proudly say, no, I'm Brazilian. And they say, wow, but your English is really good. And you puff out your chest and you say, thank you very much. Yes, it is. Okay? And I have to tell you something. This is a secret. Don't tell anybody. But when Brazilians speak English, it's actually very sexy. Okay? So keep that accent. People love it. I mean, French people can never say the H at the beginning of a word. Germans have terrible problems with pronunciation. But all you need to do is be able to understand and be understood, and that's it. So, is it vocabulary? I think it is. I love this. One of my students once said, Jack, the main problem with learning vocabulary is just so much of it. There's so much. It just seems a hell of a lot of vocabulary. When am I ever going to learn this? So, more questions. How many words are there in English? How many do students need to know? How many do we need to have this functional nativeness? Those are kind of rhetorical questions, but have a guess. I'm going to look at the thing down here. How many words are there in English, do you think? Have a guess. Let me look at your 500,000. No idea. 11,500, 300,000, about a million, zillions. Oh, it's 300,000. Oh, I love it. More than a million, over 2 million. Keep guessing because you don't know, do you? And most people don't know. Okay, so let me give you some statistics. I think this is actually quite interesting, and it's good to know. It's good for you as teachers of English to know, and I think it's good for your students to know. So here we go. Starting at the left, at the top, my hero, David Crystal, wonderful man, absolutely brilliant man, charming, wonderful, amazing man. Probably one of the world's greatest experts in the English language. He's written hundreds of books, all brilliant. David estimates that there are more than 2 million words in the English language. Wow. And you might think, oh God, I'm just going to give up. You know, I'll never learn all those words. Of course you won't. David doesn't know them either. Okay, let's go down. Starting from 2 million, let's look at the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the biggest dictionary of the English language. There are over 600,000 different words in the Oxford Dictionary. And they keep adding 25,000 new words every year. That's fun, actually. If you want some fun, look at the new words being added. They're amazing. Okay, still a lot, 600,000. But again, people don't use 600,000 words. Now, you can see in the middle, functional nativeness apparently uses between 30 and 50,000. So that's the kind of figure we're looking for. If we're looking for functional nativeness, we need 30 or 50,000. But as you move up the right-hand side, research has actually shown that if you've got 5,000 words, it's pretty adequate for most purposes. You can really get by with 5,000 words. And 5,000 words is not a lot. I'm useless at mathematics, but if you calculate how many per month or per week or per year or whatever, you can actually learn 5,000 words very quickly. The other interesting thing is that 2,000 words work harder than others. We know this from word banks and from a lot of research that's been done. So actually, 2,000 words, the most frequent words in the English language, are more important than any of these 2 million or 600,000. It's 2,000. And you can find this on the internet. Just Google, database. You can get this list of the 2,000 most frequent words. And if I had beginner students, I think I'd just get the list, translate it, and say to my students, just learn them. Memorize these words, as many as you can, because once you have this 2,000, you're going to be able to use that as a basis to almost say anything you want, okay? Those are the 2,000 most important. I just remember, I have a lot of stories, and they're all true. I've just remembered one that's wonderful. In Romania, I went to Romania to a conference once, and a driver picked me up at the airport, and he immediately said, "Good morning, sir, your car." And I was so impressed. Wow, the driver speaks English. This is wonderful. I sat in the car. It was about 40 minutes to the hotel, and he spoke English non-stop, the whole way. Talk about fluency, he was fluent. The interesting thing was, though, he didn't know many words. So he just rattled on, and when he didn't know the word, he said it in Romanian. That was hilarious. I had a wonderful time. The amazing thing is that when I got there, I'd learned so much from him. Okay, so 2,000 words, that's all you need. Get started, off you go. Okay, I'm going to give you a technical term here, which is formulaic language or formulaic sequences. You know what they are. This is very recent in terms of the study of language and language fluency. It's absolutely crucial. It's probably the most important thing to come out of language learning and language acquisition in the last probably 20 years. This is what we call multi-word units or lexical chunks. They're kind of blocks of words that have a single meaning. I've given you this reference here. Many of you probably know, many of you don't. Michael Lewis, wonderful man, brilliant man, Englishman, who had lots of theories in the 1990s and early 2000s. And he was very polemical. In fact, I had the pleasure of knowing him and meeting him and working with him. I was at Disal, Vancouver in 2000. And Michael was there giving presentations. And he actually asked me to assist him during his talk, which is an amazing privilege. But it was one of those situations where half the audience were booing him and walking out, and half the audience were applauding and hugging him. Michael was the kind of person you either loved or you hated. And there was this strict division. I loved him. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But he had this idea, what he called the lexical approach. Okay, so when he started with this idea in the 1990s, there was no scientific proof. People didn't know. Well, it's a nice idea, but we don't know. In more recent years, with databases, science has actually been able to prove that Michael was right. Oh, I was so happy when I saw that. Michael was right. If you're interested, I'll give you two references there. He's written several books, but the first was the lexical approach, and then he followed that with implementing the lexical approach, putting theory into practice, okay? Unfortunately, he died recently, but his amazing legacy he left. There are the copies of the books. They're still available. I'm sure if you go onto any website, you'll be able to buy them. If you're interested, probably get them from the internet for free maybe now these days, I don't know. So basically, what is formulaic language? It's things like collocations. It's make a mistake. It's long story short. I love that expression. The longer expression is to make a long story short. So when you're telling a story, but you want to just give a summary, to make a long story short, and then people know that you're going to give a summary. And now that's being reduced to, right, long story short, bah, and then you tell the story. It's just so perfect. It's a group of words with one meaning all coming together. Make a mistake. By the way, we don't know why we have collocations. There are lots of theories. You know, why do some words collocate with others? We don't really know. But one interesting theory is that alliteration may be one of the considerations. So you make a mistake, make mistake, m. I mean, I used to do this in my students' first class. I'd always say to them, make mistake. In this class, you do not make mistakes. M. And you drill that into their brains and they never make a mistake. Brilliant. So collocations, crucial. Phrasal verbs. I think I've studied lots of different languages, and I think English is the only language that has phrasal verbs. You know them so well. Catch up, put off, etc. People often ask me, but do you use phrasal verbs? I mean, are they really useful? Do you actually? Yes, we do. People with functional nativeness use phrasal verbs all the time. But let me tell you something. Phrasal verbs are not difficult. You all complain that they're not difficult. They're impossible. Just give up. Well, there's a phrasal verb. Yeah, your nightmare, somebody's saying. Yeah, they are a nightmare because you can never guess them. One or two you might be able to pick up your pencil. You probably guess that. But catch up, put off, whatever. And sometimes the same phrasal verb might have different meanings in different contexts. It is a nightmare. I agree with you. And then you've got idioms, things like jump the gun. What the hell does that mean? Jump the gun. If you don't know that phrase, I'm going to come back to that because I have a very interesting story to it, but that will come later. So, in terms of formulaic language, these are very common everyday words and expressions. They're absolutely fixed in form. They're linguistic conventions, and many have been in existence for centuries. The interesting thing is that research now proves that something between 25 and 50% of all language used is actually formulaic language. And it's always the natural and preferred way of expressing an idea for speakers with functional nativeness. Okay, as I put at the bottom, this is really problematic for learners. It really is a problem because most of them are not guessable. You just can't guess them. So it's a problem. there's a wonderful quote from a wonderful man, Professor Norbert Schmidt. He said, "We know formulaic language is important, but we're still trying to figure the pedagogy out." Dr. Norbert Schmidt is American. He's professor of applied linguistics at the University of Nottingham. And I lived there for 5 years when we first came back. And I had the pleasure to meet him and know him and see him in the gym and so on. And I had the honor of interviewing him. That's where the quote comes from. Because he was very honest. I mean, we talked about formulaic language, and I said to him, "Okay, Norbert, fair enough, fine. We all accept that exists. How do we teach it?" And he just looked and said, "We don't know." I mean, he's one of the world's leading experts on vocabulary acquisition, and he very genuinely said, "We don't know. We just do not know." By the way, I'll give you the quote here. The interview I gave with him was in New Roots number 55. So if you'd like to check that out, go on to the Disal website. You can see all previous issues, and it was number 55 interview with Norbert Schmidt, and he says a lot more than I can tell you today. Okay, so summing up our goals. Basically, we need to make students aware that vocabulary is not just individual words. It's not mistake as one word. It's make a mistake. They always come together. And we need to teach these multi-word units as individual vocabulary. And most important is massive exposure, which could be extensive reading. Extensive reading is one of the most effective ways of extending your vocabulary, okay? Massive exposure, extensive reading, good fun, and there's loads of stuff. But anything, TV, movies, whatever, anything where you can get contact with English, you must do that, because I don't know how many English classes you have, once a week, twice a week. It's not much. So if students want to be fluent or want to improve their English, they need to have massive exposure. And seriously, nowadays, there's no excuse. When I was preparing this, I was thrown back to my own youth. When I started learning German, and it was a long time ago, there was no technology. We didn't even have cassettes, if you know what they are. The only thing I had in terms of technology was an LP of German marching songs. That's the only thing I had. And a dirty old dictionary in the school library. I mean, nowadays, you know, there's just no excuse for not having massive exposure, because it's so easy and it's such fun. You know, there's no reason for it. Okay, let's move on to total fluency. So basically, for students to achieve total fluency, you need to have this in-depth knowledge of these very common everyday words and phrases, and also the ability to understand them and use them correctly and appropriately. So it's not just, oh, I think I know what that means. Can you use it? Can you use it correctly and appropriately? So this mastery facilitates fluency in language production and reception. And that's also in speaking and writing and reading and listening and all the different skills. What happens is when students gain this kind of fluency, it empowers them. It makes them feel so confident and also seem very proficient and idiomatic. And it really impresses other speakers. You know, I've seen this so many times. I've seen it with, you know, friends of mine who are learners of English coming out with a phrase, and everybody kind of goes, "Oh, wow, you know, yeah, well, that's cool. That was just so perfect. Where did you get that from?" That's exactly what I would have said. Yeah. So it really impresses people. So how can learners master this everyday language? Before I go into the examples I'm going to give you, I thought it'd be worth thinking about some of the problems. I mean, there are lots of problems, but some very common ones are the following. Let's imagine you know the word, but you don't understand. The example I gave before, to jump the gun. You know jump, you know gun. But you've no idea what jump the gun means. So you know the words, but you don't understand. Very quick story, and I'll mention in a moment. a wonderful friend of mine, Roberto, here in England, doing a PhD, very good speaker of English. And I saw him one day after an interview with his supervisor, and he looked very worried. And I said, "You okay, Roberto?" And he said, "No, I'm really worried. Just had a really bad meeting with my supervisor. I think I'm getting it all wrong. I don't think I'll be able to do my PhD. I'm so worried, and my wife's having a child." I said, "Well, what's happening?" So he started telling me. And then I said, "Hang on, so what did he say?" "Well, he said something about a gun." Oh, well, obviously it's bad. I mean, I don't know if I'm shooting myself in the foot, I'm shooting something, I'm obviously doing something wrong. And I thought for a moment, and I said, "Did he by any chance use the expression jump the gun?" And he said, "That's it, that was it." He kept saying, "You're jumping the gun, you're jumping the gun, you're jumping the gun. So it's bad, isn't it?" And I said, "Actually, no." And I told him what it means. And I'll tell you later. Okay, another problem. You don't know the words, so you don't understand. So first you know the words, but you don't understand because they're put together in a different way. Then you get a word like berserk. My husband went berserk. What does that mean? Was he happy? Was he excited? Was he angry? I've no idea. So if you don't know the word, you can't possibly know. Then you have a situation where you have similar concepts and customs that you have in your own language, but you're not really sure about them in English, and they're often not exactly the same. So you might think in Portuguese, "Ah, me dá tempo, give me a time." Can I say "give me a time"? Sounds a bit weird. So what do? You don't say that. You just say something else. You don't say what you actually want to say. Of course, I think it's "give me a break." Ah, okay, give me a break. Yeah, okay, now I know. But if you don't know, you wouldn't be able to use it. And then you probably just avoid things like that. A lovely example is a very dear German speaker friend of mine from Austria. I've done a lot of work and trips with him around German-speaking countries. And he says exactly like this: "On the one hand side and on the other hand side," with exactly that kind of pronunciation, which is hilarious. And when he said that many times, I realized, one, it's a favorite phrase of his. Two, he doesn't know the expression. And what he's doing is translating. An der einen Seite und an der anderen Seite in German. Literal translation, okay? But it's not that. It's on the one hand and on the other hand. So interesting, I politely said to him after listening to it many times, it wasn't just a slip up. He obviously didn't know. I politely explained to him, and he said, "Oh, that's just good. That was very good. Yeah, thank you." But would you believe he keeps saying it? He keeps saying it even till today, because it's very interesting. When you put something like that into your mind and you think it's correct, it kind of gets fossilized. So he just keeps saying it. It's kind of cute, and I know him, but it's weird, yeah, because it's not English, basically. Okay, so you know expressions, concepts, and customs in your own language, but you just don't know if they exist in English. There's another problem. So here's a favorite one of mine, quebrar o galho. So you think, quebrar o galho. Well, that means to break the branch. Can I say that? You think? Probably not. Probably not. By the way, there are lots of words and expressions in Portuguese and in English probably, but a lot in Portuguese that you just cannot translate. And I know students are always asking the things you don't know. Como é que fala? They're always asking these things that you don't know. But it's interesting to be able to give an answer. And the answer is, how do you say quebrar o galho in English? You don't. You don't, because it's a Brazilian concept and it doesn't mean anything in English. And the only thing you can do is explain it, by saying I put there to help solve a problem. That's basically what it means. But there is no expression in English for quebrar o galho. By the way, does anybody know why you say quebrar o galho? I'm going to have a look at anybody got the chats here? Nope, nope, nope. Ah, yeah. Why do you say in Portuguese, though? Quebrar o galho. Yeah, interesting. Well, we don't know, do we? That's the whole point. You know, when it's our native language, we don't need to know. I'll tell you, it's very interesting. It comes from Umbanda. It's trabalho de Exu, if you know what that means. And if you're not, if you don't understand Portuguese, I'm sorry, but it basically, you know, a kind of spiritual religion that you want something done. Very often it's romantic things or money or whatever, and you ask the Exu, who's very powerful, to solve your problem, and he does that by breaking branches and doing things and so on. So there you are. Quebrar o galho comes from Umbanda. And I think 99% of Brazilians don't know that, but it's just an interesting fact. Okay, another one is you don't know expressions and concepts and customs because they don't exist in your L1 or your culture. I've put here an interesting one, to touch base. Yeah. Oh, somebody put, there's a book called Break the Branch. Yeah, and I wrote it, okay? Just by chance, that's one of my books. So if you're interested in expressions from Portuguese and how you say them in English, there are a lot more in that. Okay, so this is an interesting one, to touch base. I didn't know this. It was a few years ago now, but it was an American friend of mine who said to me, you know, let's touch base. You know, I mean, this is another, you know, American native English speaker, and I'm going, right, what does that mean? I don't know what it means, yeah? So if it's not a concept in your language or culture, you can't understand. I put this as a good example, but I almost put some others that we've got in British English especially, which come from cricket. We have so many expressions from cricket, but you have to be British to understand them. Okay, so these are some of the problems. And going back to what I said before, so this is many years ago. I was teaching in London, and I had a group of advanced students, and I just said something naturally. I really can't remember the example, but I said something, and the student said to me, what does that mean? Oh, I said, don't you know that? So I explained, and he said, well, that's weird. Why do you say that? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm English. I just say it. You know, it's just like quebrar o galho. I don't know why we say it. We just say it. That's it. I don't know. But like all good teachers, I said, I don't know, but I'll try and find out. And I found out. And you know what? I discovered that there are so many words and phrases that have really fascinating and entertaining origins in English. So knowing why we use a particular word or expression actually makes it easier to understand and easier to remember. If I tell that story about quebrar o galho to someone and in Portuguese, they'll never forget. So I thought, this is interesting. I'm going to research this and teach this. I'm going to take some examples. I did write a book called Why Do We Say That? So I don't wish to be overly commercial, because actually, if you go on the internet and you look for things like unusual origins of words, you'll find millions. You'll find millions. So it's just suggestions, and I'm being honest to say that I took these examples from the book I wrote using words and expressions I've been teaching for many years with great effect. So we had that one before, to go berserk. So there we are. To go berserk means ficar furioso, frenético, enlouquecido. Okay? So if you didn't know the word berserk, but now you know. So translation, I don't see any problem with translation. I actually think it's a really good idea. I also believe you should always give a clear example with translation also. And then the story. So here's the story, actually in Portuguese, but basically explains that berserk comes from Icelandic. And it's basically a bear shirt. And in the mythology, in Scandinavian mythology, the warriors would actually put on these bear skins and scream and shout and scare the other people they were fighting. So that's where it comes from, to go berserk. And here's a picture. Okay, there's the man going berserk, the warrior. Now, what happens is something very, very important. when you have something like that, it creates a multisensory image in the brain, okay? So basically, as you probably know, you have short-term memory and long-term memory. When you learn something, it goes into short-term memory. You need to fix it in the long-term memory. And one of the best ways to do it is by creating multisensory images. So you guys, I promise you, this is in your DNA now. You'll never forget to go berserk, because you'll think of me, you'll think of that picture, you'll think of the story, and you'll never forget it. And when you say to somebody, oh, my boss will go berserk, they're going to go, wow, what amazing English you speak. That's brilliant. Okay? You'll never forget it. By the way, we just wipe my brow because it's still 35 degrees here and it's 8:40 at night. Wonderful. It's just like being in Brazil. I'm going to give you some statistics now that are actually not sure I want to give them, but this is actually based on recent research. It goes like this. Anything you learn, anything, doesn't matter, it's baking a cake or driving a car or whatever, or learning English, whatever you learn new that day, you forget 70% by the next day. I mean, that's really scary. What? I just learned it. I've lost it. 70% I've forgotten. This is a fact. So there's a very interesting, simple, practical, and free technique that I offer to you, and I'd like you to invite your students to do this. It's very simple. You learn something that day, the same day in the evening, quick revision at night before you go to bed. And then you go to sleep. And off you go dreaming wonderful. What happens when you sleep is the brain continues processing new information while you're sleeping. So no effort. You're just dreaming away, having a wonderful sleep. Your brain's doing all the hard work, and you wake up and it's being processed by your brain. You need to keep doing that frequently. So do it, for, I don't know, 5 or 6 days or a week every day. Then do it in a month's time or 2 weeks' time and so on, and keep going. And you fix it into your long-term memory. It's a very simple technique that I think a lot of people could benefit from. So another example was chop chop I gave you before. That just means quick. Come on, let's go chop chop. And that comes from Chinese. It actually means quick. And actually that's where we get the word chopsticks from, which means, quick sticks, which, as I joke there, saying maybe for the Orientals who use them all the time, but not for most of us. I think I mentioned before that I've been doing a lot of work in China over the last 4 or 5 years. A wonderful country, wonderful people, fabulous food. I'm a foodie, so I love Chinese food. I've eaten some very bizarre things, but still it's been very wonderful. And in fact, normally in April, I would be in China working with teachers, but obviously this year I didn't go. So I hope maybe to go next year if things return to normal. But anyway, basically, I had to make sure. I thought I could use chopsticks, but if you don't use them, you don't know how to use them well. If you're not fluent with your chopsticks, you won't be able to eat. So I had to learn very quickly. And I've got a nice image here because basically, if you think you can use chopsticks, the final test is to be able to pick up peanuts individually with the chopsticks. Okay? Chopsticks. I mean, I didn't believe you had to eat, peanuts with chopsticks, but you do. And the Chinese are very good at just picking them up and popping them in their mouths. And so if you think you know how to use chopsticks, try picking up peanuts. Okay, and the other expression I had at the beginning was to know the ropes. Entender bem do assunto. If you have any problems, ask John. He knows the ropes. This actually comes from navigation. As you know, the British have been great navigators for centuries, so it's not surprising. We have a lot of expressions that come from navigation. And the ropes here refer to the ropes on the old sailing ships. Isn't that a beautiful picture? I don't know where I found that, on the internet somewhere. But anyways, beautiful picture. All these complicated ropes on the ship, that's how you need to know them. To jump the gun. So finally, I gave you this before, and I told you about my friend Roberto, who just thought his supervisor was telling him something terrible, when I explained to him that actually he's just saying, wait, don't deal with that yet. It's a good idea, but not yet. You need to do this first. So it's basically começar antes do tempo, chegar a uma conclusão precipitada. That's all it means. It was actually very, and the relief on Roberto's face, oh my God. Oh, and I was so worried. I thought, no, you have nothing to worry about. So you can actually completely misunderstand an expression if you don't know what it means. That comes from athletics. Again, once you know, oh, of course, yeah, when you fire the pistol to start the race, now it makes sense. But if you don't know, you didn't know. So there's, I think that's Usain Bolt, who actually was eliminated for jumping the gun. So basically, doing something before the right time. To touch base, basically to contact somebody you haven't seen for a long time. And that comes from American baseball, okay? It's those 4 bases that you have to run round to finish the game, okay? And there you have some children playing baseball and touching base. I mean, it's great. When you know, it's easy. And my favorite, I think, of all time is the can of worms. People use this all the time. It's just something really complex and difficult. Is a can of worms. The only way you can understand that, I think, is trying to imagine a can. And when you open it, it's all full of horrible worms, all decomposing and coming out. And I actually have a nice picture of that. There you are. Yeah. Okay. Can of worms, a really complex, horrible, nasty situation. So very quickly, 10 tips for teaching vocabulary. I'm just going to go through, but you can pick it up later on the internet. Teaching manageable doses. I mean, if you like these ideas, don't rush off and give your students 20 new words and expressions. They won't be able to learn them. Yeah, just give them in small doses. Always show words in clear context. Maybe get them to try and guess what the meaning is. Encourage them to keep a record and encourage them to use learners' dictionaries. Learners' dictionaries are fantastic. There's so many really good ones these days, and they're all on the internet. It's also helpful if they use the vocabulary in a meaningful way, and especially if they personalize, okay? So when they talk about themselves, it's much more interesting. And they need to encounter the words many times, so plenty of revision. I think the statistic is you need to see a new word in different contexts at least 9 times before you actually assimilate it. So you need lots of revision. And basically, I think words are fun. And most learners would actually prefer to discover new lexical items than the present perfect. Again, boring. And students always learn and remember best if they interact with others, especially solving problems. And we all know that activities, games, quizzes, they're so motivating and a perfect way to either present or revise vocabulary. So, quick quiz. You might need a pen and paper or something for this, or somewhere you can just note this down, or maybe you can just do it in your head. It's a very quick quiz with 6 questions and 6 answers. I'm going to give you 3, and then the other 3 give you like 30 seconds to answer, and let's see how you get on. Ready? First 3. Got it? 4, 5, 6. Very good. I'm seeing the answers here in the chat box. It's absolutely fantastic. But again, just a couple of things. It's not know your ropes or jump your gun. Yeah, they're fixed phrases. You're jumping the gun. Yeah, know the ropes. Tiny mistake, but as I said, they're fixed phrases. You don't change them. Brilliant. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I'm so happy. I am so happy because what I can see here is that most of you have got all the answers right, if not all of them. Maybe the ones who didn't get them didn't answer, but that's what I would imagine. So here are the answers. It's to go berserk, to know the ropes, to jump the gun, chop chop, touch base, can of worms. I hope, I'll go back a bit because I want to just say something before I go to the question time. Something very interesting that I'd like to share with you from cognitive psychology. It's called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, or the red car syndrome. It's very interesting. When the brain receives new information, especially if it's interesting, the brain takes notice. And the brain cannot absorb all the information that's coming into it through all the sensors all day long. But when it gets a new piece of information, it keeps that sort of at the top of your mind. I promise you, and here's a little test for myself, I promise you that you will come across these words and expressions either today or within the next few days or next week or maximum 1 month, and you're going to say, oh, to go berserk, he said, oh, he said chop chop. I never knew that before. And Jack told it on the webinar, and there it is. They've used it. Why? Because you don't notice. When it's a new thing at the top of your brain, you start to notice. It's like if you think, oh, I think I'm going to buy a car, a yellow. I want a yellow car. Yeah, but there aren't many yellow cars, are there? I don't think so. And then you go out and you see yellow cars everywhere because you didn't notice them before. Ask a pregnant woman when she gets pregnant, when she goes out, she says, my God, there's so many pregnant women everywhere. But you don't notice if you're not pregnant. Basically that. So thanks very much. Any questions? I've seen a lot of things coming up in the chat box. A lot of very nice comments and so on. And I'm very honored. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm going to cry. Oh, this is great. Wonderful. Oh, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed writing it, because I did have so much fun writing this. Oh, a couple of messages, very important. You might notice a very discreet red banner at the top that says Seleção Especial Jack Scholes. Okay, so I must tell you that Disal has very kindly put, I think there are about 11 or 12 books that I've written for Disal. They've put them all on special offer for you guys with 35% discount. So if you click, you can go and buy any or all of them, and I will be very grateful. There's something else I need to tell you. Oh yes, there's going to be a raffle. There's going to be a raffle, and the Disal are giving some of my books free in the raffle, and that will be done on the Disal Instagram. So go onto Instagram and see if you've won any of my books. Okay, any questions? I'm seeing lots of wonderful thank you and I thank you and blah, blah, blah. Any specific questions? I'm very happy to take questions. Yeah. Any others? You know, I've just remembered, I'll tell you another quick story. When I was talking about this Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, I was going from England to Brazil once, and two really nice men were sitting next to me, very charming, but they were speaking a language I'd never heard before. And I thought, this is interesting. I can usually identify languages. So I started talking to them, and they were lovely people. And so I said to them, what are you speaking? Where are you from? And they very proudly said, we are from Kiribati. And I said, excuse me? Kiribati. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I've never heard of your country. I mean, I travel the world all the time, and my geography is quite good. I've never heard of your country. Oh, yes, Kiribati. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I swear, I got home. The next day, I opened Veja magazine, and there was a whole report about Kiribati. I said, I don't believe that. I never heard that before. And I swear, I see Kiribati all over the place now, just because it was something new. It's actually quite a sad story if you want to Google Kiribati. It's in the Pacific, a group of islands in the Pacific. And basically, with the sea level rising, the country is disappearing. And they're desperately asking for people to take people from Kiribati into their homes. It's very sad, but there you are. But I never forget that. I thought, wow, never thought I'd heard Kiribati in my life, and now I see it all over the place. Okay, it's an interesting question from Giselle Jack. Some of my students are incredibly resistant to teacher talking, especially if it's related to word origin or something culturally relevant. That's an interesting, I've lost it now, where does it go? Why are they resistant? Okay, I think, that's a very interesting question, a very difficult. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think personally, I would like to know why. So the answer is, you need to show interest in their lack of interest. There must be a reason for that, okay? Maybe they just don't want to learn or they don't care, but then you have a very important job to show to them that when you're learning a language, the language is also connected to a culture. And it's fascinating learning about different cultures. I don't know who your students are, where they're from, or what age they are. It might just be a sort of natural resistance from certain groups. I don't know. But if your students are not interested in anything, my answer is also be interested in why they're not interested, okay? Because there must be a reason. And maybe there's nothing you can do about it, but there you are. Jack, thanks, and Disal, you're the best. Oh, lovely. Okay. Well, I think that's it. I'm looking at my clock here and it says 20:58. So I think I'm going to say bye-bye. And thanks again to all of you, and hope to see you again. I do miss not giving talks or workshops and being able to see you all. It's nice to get comments and so on, but it's so different when you've got a group and you can interact and you can, talk with people. But I suppose it's better than nothing. And I hope it's been very helpful to you. Okay? Yes, thanks a million. Thank you. Ciao. Bye. Bye.